Captain Jake Morrison sat in his command chair, watching the main screen display the beautiful colors of an unexplored star system. The Horizon's Edge had been traveling for 3 weeks, mapping new territories at the edge of human space. It was supposed to be a routine mission, the kind that filled reports but rarely made headlines. "Captain, I'm picking up some unusual readings," said Amy Foster from her navigation station. Her fingers moved quickly across her console, pulling up data streams that didn't make sense. Jake leaned forward, his instincts telling him something was wrong.
"What kind of readings?"
"Energy signatures, big ones, and they just appeared out of nowhere," Amy replied, her voice tight with concern. Before Jake could respond, the space in front of them rippled like water. One by one, massive ships emerged from what looked like tiers in reality itself. They were dark and angular, covered in armor plating that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Jake counted 12 ships, each one larger than the Horizon's Edge. "Battle stations," Jake shouted, and alarms began blaring throughout the ship. "Danny, get our weapons online. Lisa, I need full power to shields." Danny Cole's hands flew across the weapons console while Lisa Hayes, down in engineering, began routing power to defensive systems. But even as they prepared, Jake knew they were outmatched. The Horizon's Edge was an exploration vessel, not a warship. A communication signal cut through their systems and a face appeared on the main screen. The alien was tall and thin, with silver skin and eyes that glowed with an inner light. When it spoke, the translation software rendered its words into perfect English. "Human vessel, I am Commander Vec of the Valtrine Collective. Your species has been evaluated and found to be a threat to galactic stability. You possess technology beyond your wisdom to use it properly." Jake stood up, his jaw clenched. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the human vessel Horizon's Edge. We're on a peaceful exploration mission. We don't want any trouble." "Your wants are irrelevant," Vec replied coldly. "Humanity will be allowed to exist, but you will be stripped of your advanced technology. You will return to a simpler existence, one where you cannot threaten others." "Like hell we will," Jake said. "We've done nothing to threaten anyone." Vec's expression didn't change. "Your protest is noted and dismissed. This is not a negotiation. It is an inevitability." The screen went dark. For a moment, the bridge was silent except for the hum of the ship's systems. Then Danny spoke up, his voice urgent. "Captain, they're charging weapons. Some kind of energy buildup I've never seen before." "Evasive maneuvers," Jake ordered. "Amy, get us out of here." "Maximum speed." Amy's hands danced across her controls, but before the ship could move, a wave of blue energy exploded from the Valtrine flagship. It washed over the Horizon's Edge like a tsunami, and every system on the ship died at once. The lights went out. The engines stopped. The gentle hum that every spacer learned to sleep with simply vanished. Emergency lighting flickered on after a moment, bathing everything in a dim red glow, but that was all. Every screen was dark. Every console was dead. "What happened?" Jake demanded, though he already knew the answer couldn't be good. Lisa's voice came through on the emergency communication system, crackling with static. "Captain, everything's fried. Computers, engines, weapons, navigation, everything. It's like someone hit us with the biggest electromagnetic pulse ever created." Kevin Brooks, the science officer, was already pulling open panels and checking circuits with a handheld scanner. "She's right, Captain. Every advanced system we have is completely dead. Whatever they hit us with, it targeted our technology specifically." Jake felt his blood run cold. "Life support?" "On emergency batteries," Lisa replied. "We've got maybe 3 days if we're lucky. After that, the air recyclers stop working and we suffocate." Through the main viewing port, which still worked because it was just reinforced glass, Jake watched the Valtrine ships moving away. They weren't even staying to finish the job. They'd left the Horizon's Edge to drift in space, completely helpless. Beck's voice came through one last time on the emergency radio frequency, which was too simple to be affected by their weapon. "Other human ships will arrive eventually. You may survive if they come in time. Consider this a demonstration. Your Earth fleet will receive the same treatment. Humanity's age of technology is over." Then the Valtrine ships vanished, jumping away to wherever they had come from, leaving the Horizon's Edge alone in the dark. Jake stood in the red emergency lighting looking at his crew. Amy had tears in her eyes. Danny was cursing under his breath. Kevin looked shocked, unable to process what had just happened. These were good people, scientists and explorers, not soldiers. They'd signed up to see new worlds, not fight in a war. "Options," Jake said quietly. "I need options, people. We could use the emergency beacon, Amy suggested. The nearest human outpost would pick it up in maybe a week. A ship could reach us in 2 or 3 weeks after that. We'll be dead in 3 days, Danny pointed out grimly. What about the escape pods? Someone asked. Kevin shook his head. Their systems are fried too. Same with the shuttles. Anything with a computer is just dead weight now. Jake walked to the viewing port and stared out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Valtrine were heading toward Earth, probably to deliver their ultimatum to humanity. They'd cripple every ship, every station, every piece of advanced technology humans had built. They'd send humanity back to the Stone Age without firing a single lethal shot. No, Jake said suddenly. We're not going to sit here and wait to die. We're not going to let them win. Captain, Lisa's voice came through the radio. How much of the ship is actually destroyed? Jake asked. I mean physically destroyed, not just disabled. There was a pause. Well, the structure is fine. The reactor is intact, just offline. The engines are mechanically sound. It's just all the control systems and computers that are fried. A crazy idea began forming in Jake's mind. It was desperate, probably impossible, but it was better than giving up. Then we rebuild. We strip out everything that doesn't work and we rebuild this ship from scratch. We've got 3 days and a crew full of the smartest people Earth could send out here. We use every piece of equipment on this ship, every tool, every spare part. We make the Horizon's Edge fly again. That's impossible, Kevin said. Probably, Jake agreed. But we're going to do it anyway. Because the alternative is dying here while Earth gets conquered. I'd rather die trying to fight back. He could see the idea taking hold in their eyes. It was crazy, but it was something. It was hope. Lisa, get every engineer we have working on this. Danny, Kevin, Amy, everyone contributes. We have 3 days to do the impossible. Let's get started. The temperature had dropped to near freezing throughout the Horizon's Edge. Every breath came out as a small cloud of mist. The crew worked in their heavy jackets, their fingers stiff and clumsy, but they worked without stopping. They had no choice. The clock was ticking down to their deaths. Lisa Hayes stood in the main engineering bay, surrounded by torn-open panels and scattered components. She'd been awake for 18 hours straight, and she had no intention of sleeping. Around her, a dozen engineers and technicians worked frantically, following her orders as she directed them like a conductor leading an orchestra. The reactor is fine, she explained to Jake, who had come down to check their progress. It's designed to survive almost anything. But every control system is dead. Normally, there are 1,000 safety checks and computer systems managing the reactor. We don't have any of that anymore. Can we run it without the computers? Jake asked. Lisa wiped sweat from her forehead despite the cold. Technically, yes, but it's incredibly dangerous. The safety systems exist for good reasons. Without them, if we make one mistake, the reactor could overload and explode, or melt down, or just shut off and leave us drifting again. But it's possible? It's possible, Lisa admitted. We'd have to monitor everything manually. Temperature, pressure, containment field strength, everything. It would take constant attention, but yes, we could make it work. Jake nodded. Do it, what else? The engines are the same situation. Mechanically, they're perfect. We just need to figure out how to control them without computers. Danny has an idea about that. Jake found Danny Cole in what used to be the weapons bay. The sophisticated energy weapons were all useless now. Their targeting computers and power regulators completely fried. But Danny wasn't looking at the energy weapons. He was looking at the ship's emergency equipment, specifically the escape pod launch system. Captain, check this out, Danny said excitedly. He held up a simple mechanical lever. This is how they used to launch escape pods on old ships before everything became automated. It's just a physical mechanism. Pull the lever. Compressed air launches the pod. No computers needed. Okay, Jake said slowly. But we need weapons, not escape pods. Right, but it got me thinking. What if we stop trying to be sophisticated? The Valtrine weapon works by frying complex systems. So what if we build the simplest weapons possible? Old-fashioned railguns, just metal projectiles accelerated by electromagnetic force. We can power them directly from the reactor using cables. No computers, no fancy targeting. Just point and shoot. Jake felt a smile spreading across his face. That's brilliant. How long will it take? If we cannibalize parts from everywhere, maybe 2 days. They won't be pretty, and the aiming will be manual, but they'll hit like a freight train. Do it, Jake ordered. Up on the bridge, Amy Foster sat with paper spread across every surface. Actual paper. the kind nobody used anymore except for special occasions. She was doing calculations by hand, using math that hadn't been necessary since humans invented navigation computers. Kevin Brooks worked beside her, helping to plot their course using nothing but star charts and basic physics. It was slow, tedious work, but it was working. "If we can get the engines running, I can navigate us anywhere we need to go," Amy said. "It'll be old school. I'll have to constantly recalculate based on our speed and direction, making adjustments manually, but I can do it." "The Valtrine probably think we're helpless," Kevin added. "They don't understand that humans learned to navigate in space before we had computers. We can still do it the old way." Throughout the ship, similar scenes played out. The medical bay doctor figured out how to keep the medical equipment running using car batteries. The communications officer built a basic radio transmitter from spare parts. The cook figured out how to keep food from spoiling using an improvised cooling system made from fire extinguishers. Every crew member contributed something. They weren't just following orders anymore. They were inventing, improvising, adapting. This was what humans did best, Lisa realized. When faced with the impossible, they found a way. By the end of the first day, they had the reactor running at minimal power. It was enough to restore some heat and keep the basic life support going. The air was still thin and cold, but they weren't dying anymore. They'd bought themselves more time. Jake gathered the senior staff for a meeting. They looked exhausted, dirty, and half-frozen, but there was something else in their eyes now. "Hope. Status report," Jake said. Lisa spoke first. "Reactor is stable at 20% power. I can push it higher, but I need to finish the manual control systems first. Give me another day." "Engines are mechanically ready," Amy reported. "Once Lisa gives us power, I can get us moving. Navigation is all plotted. It'll be rough but functional. Weapons will be ready in 40 hours, Danny said. I'm building 4 railguns. They're not sophisticated, but they'll punch through armor. We're also rigging the ship's emergency cutting lasers as close-range weapons." Kevin looked up from his notes. "I've been analyzing the data from the Valtrine attack. I found something interesting. Their EMP weapon specifically targets advanced computer systems. It looks for sophisticated electronics and overloads them. But simple circuits, mechanical systems, basic electronics, those barely get touched. What does that mean?" Jake asked. "It means our rebuilt ship will be immune to their weapon. They can't shut us down again because we don't have the systems they target anymore. We're too simple for their weapon to work properly." The implications hung in the air. They weren't just rebuilding their ship. They were building something the Valtrine couldn't stop. "There's more," Kevin continued. "I've been looking at the sensor data from their ships. The Valtrine technology is actually less advanced than ours in many ways. They've specialized in this EMP weapon, but their ships are slower, their shields are weaker. They've been winning by shutting down enemy ships before the fight even starts. But in a straight fight with our ship too simple to disable, I think we could take them." Jake felt something fierce growing in his chest. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about fighting back. "How long until we're fully operational?" he asked. 60 hours, Lisa said. "Maybe less if we push hard and get lucky." "Then let's push hard," Jake said. "Because once we're up and running, we're not heading back to Earth for rescue. We're going after the Valtrine." The room went quiet. Then Danny grinned. "Hell yes. They're heading to Earth to shut down our entire fleet," Jake continued. "But they don't know we're coming. They think we're dead or helpless. We're going to hit them before they reach human space. We're going to show them what humans do when you try to shut us down." Amy nodded. "I can plot an intercept course. If we push our engines, we can catch them." "It's incredibly dangerous," Lisa warned. "The ship is held together with improvisation and hope. If we push too hard, something could break. We could explode, or the reactor could fail, or we could win," Jake interrupted. "Or we could save Earth. Or we could show every alien species out there that humanity doesn't give up. Ever." Lisa smiled despite herself. "Or we could do all of that. Then we're agreed," Jake said. "We have 60 hours to turn the horizon's edge into something that can fight. Not a sophisticated exploration vessel, but a warship. A crude, dangerous, unstoppable warship. Let's get to work." The crew scattered back to their stations, moving with renewed energy. They weren't victims anymore. They were warriors, building their weapon one piece at a time. Jake stood alone on the bridge for a moment, looking out at the stars. The Valtrine had tried to shut them down, to take away their technology and leave them helpless. But they'd forgotten something important about humans. Humans had reached space with computers less powerful than a modern calculator. They'd survived ice ages, plagues, and wars. They'd built civilizations from nothing over and over again. Technology was a tool, but human determination was the real weapon. The Valtrine were about to learn that lesson the hard way. The horizon's edge roared back to life after 58 hours of desperate work. It wasn't a roar like before, smooth and controlled. This was rough, loud, and violent. The ship shook constantly now, vibrating with barely contained power. Every system was pushed beyond its normal limits, held together by welds, cables, and human determination. Jake stood on the bridge, which looked nothing like it had before. The elegant touchscreens were gone, replaced by simple switches and dials salvaged from everywhere on the ship. Wires ran across the ceiling and down the walls. Everything was exposed, visible, accessible. If something broke, they could fix it immediately without having to navigate through computer menus. Reactor at 80% and climbing, Lisa's voice came through the radio. They'd restored basic communication using simple radio systems, the kind that were too basic for the Valtrine weapon to affect. Captain, I have to warn you again. We're running way beyond safe operating parameters. The reactor was never designed to work like this. Noted, Jake replied. Keep pushing. We need all the power we can get. On the view screen, which was now just a direct feed from external cameras with no computer processing, the stars stretched past them as the horizon's edge accelerated. Amy sat at navigation with her paper charts and manual controls, making constant small adjustments to keep them on course. How long until we intercept the Valtrine fleet? Jake asked. Amy checked her calculations. At our current speed, 18 hours. But Captain, we're going really fast, way faster than this ship was rated for. How much faster? About 30% beyond maximum safe speed, Amy admitted. The engines are running hot. Lisa says they might hold, but there's no guarantee. Danny looked up from the weapons station. Railguns are charged and ready. I've got 4 shots before we need to reload, and reloading takes about 2 minutes per gun. The emergency lasers work for close range, maybe 50 meters. That's not much firepower, Kevin observed from his science station. No, Danny agreed. But what we lack in quantity, we make up for in punch. Each railgun slug is traveling at a significant fraction of light speed. When it hits something, it hits hard. Jake studied the tactical display, which was now just a simple screen showing dots and distances. No fancy projections or computer analysis, just raw data that they had to interpret themselves. The Valtrine fleet was moving toward human space at a steady pace, not hurrying. Why would they? As far as they knew, no human ship could stop them. Kevin, tell me more about their technology, Jake said. Kevin pulled out his handwritten notes. He'd been analyzing every scrap of data they'd recorded during the Valtrine attack, working out the physics and engineering by hand. The Valtrine have built their entire military strategy around that EMP weapon. It's brilliant, really. They can disable any advanced civilization's technology without destroying it. Very efficient. But, Jake prompted, but it means they haven't had to develop other technologies as much. Their ships are tough, but they're not particularly fast or maneuverable. Their shields are decent against energy weapons, but they're calibrated for the kind of sophisticated weapons most species use. And their actual combat experience is limited because most fights end before they begin. So they're used to winning easy, Jake said. Exactly. They show up, fire the EMP, and the fight is over. They've probably been doing this for years, maybe centuries. It's made them complacent. Jake smiled grimly. Then let's show them what happens when the fight doesn't end. The hours crawled by as the horizon's edge hurtled through space. The crew worked in shifts, some sleeping while others monitored systems. But sleep was difficult. The ship shook constantly and strange sounds echoed through the hull. Every creak and groan made someone worry that something was about to break. Lisa barely left engineering. She'd set up a cot next to the reactor and grabbed sleep in 15-minute intervals, always with one eye on the temperature gauges and pressure readings. The reactor was running at 95% now, generating more power than it was ever meant to. The control rods were adjusted manually every few minutes to keep the reaction stable. "This is insane," muttered one of her engineers, watching the temperature gauges climb higher. "We're going to melt the containment vessel. Not if we keep adjusting," Lisa said, though she wasn't entirely sure herself. She was operating on instinct and calculation, making decisions that would have made her old professors cry. But it was working. Somehow, impossibly, it was working. Up on the bridge, Amy suddenly called out, "Captain, I've got visual on the Valtrine fleet." Jake moved to look at the screen. There they were, 12 dark ships moving in a tight formation. They looked dangerous and powerful, which they were. But they also looked vulnerable, Jake realized. Their formation was too tight, too orderly. They weren't expecting trouble. "Battle stations," Jake ordered. "Amy, take us in close. I want to drop out of high speed right in the middle of their formation." "That's going to be rough on the ship," Amy warned. "Everything we're doing is rough on the ship," Jake replied. "Do it anyway." The crew scrambled to their positions. Danny powered up the railguns, which hummed and crackled with barely contained electromagnetic energy. Kevin monitored the Valtrine ships for any sign they'd detected the horizon's edge. Lisa pushed the reactor to 100%, ignoring all the warning signs that under normal circumstances would trigger an emergency shutdown. 30 seconds to intercept, Amy counted down. 20 seconds. Everyone hold on to something. 10 seconds. Jake gripped his chair. The ship was shaking so hard now that he could barely see the screens clearly. Red lights flashed throughout the bridge, warnings that would have meant automatic shutdown if the computer system still existed, but there were no computers to stop them now. Only human will keep the horizon's edge flying. 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Dropping speed now. The horizon's edge hit its braking thrusters at full power while simultaneously cutting the main engines. The deceleration was brutal. Jake felt like he weighed twice as much, pressed hard into his chair. Equipment that wasn't properly secured flew forward. Someone screamed. Metal groaned under stress. And then they were there, hanging in space directly, in the middle of the Valtrine formation, so close to the alien ships that Jake could see details on their hulls. For a moment, nothing happened. The Valtrine had been moving in a lazy formation, not expecting any threat. Suddenly, having a human ship appear in their midst caught them completely off guard. Then the Valtrine commander must have recognized what ship it was, the same ship they'd disabled days ago, the ship that should be drifting helplessly or already destroyed by system failures. "They're hailing us," Kevin reported. "Put them on screen," Jake ordered. Commander Vec's face appeared, and for the first time the alien's expression showed emotion, confusion and shock. "This is impossible. Your ship was destroyed. Your technology was disabled." "You tried to shut us down," Jake said calmly. "So we rebuilt, and now we're coming for you." "You cannot fight us," Vec said. But there was uncertainty in his voice now. "We are superior in every way." "Then prove it," Jake replied. He cut the communication and turned to Danny. "Fire everything." The railguns unleashed their fury. 4 slugs of dense metal, accelerated to impossible speeds, streaked across the short distance between the horizon's edge and the nearest Valtrine ships. There was no warning, no time to dodge. The first slug hit a Valtrine cruiser amidships. The shields that were designed to stop energy weapons did almost nothing against solid matter moving at that speed. The slug punched completely through the ship, entering one side and exiting the other, leaving a perfectly round hole. Atmosphere vented in a sparkling cloud. The ship's lights flickered and died. The second and third slugs hit 2 more ships with similar results. The fourth missed, passing between 2 Valtrine vessels so close that it probably scraped their shields. "Reload!" Danny shouted, but Jake knew they didn't have time. "Amy, get us moving." "Maximum evasion," Jake ordered. "Lisa, everything the engines have got." The horizon's edge lurched forward, its rebuilt engines screaming with effort. The Valtrine ships were finally reacting, trying to bring their weapons to bear, but the human ship was already moving, weaving through their formation like a fighter rather than a cruiser. "They're firing their EMP weapon," Kevin warned. "Let them," Jake said. The blue wave of energy washed over the horizon's edge, and absolutely nothing happened. The lights stayed on. The engines kept running. Every system continued working exactly As before, because there were no sophisticated computers to fry. The Valtrine weapon was completely useless. The confusion in the Valtrine fleet was immediate and obvious. Their primary weapon had just failed completely. Ships that had relied on that weapon for countless victories suddenly found themselves in an actual fight, something they had little experience with. Jake watched as the alien ships struggled to adapt. Their movements were sluggish, their reactions slow. They'd grown comfortable with easy victories. Now they were facing an opponent who refused to be shut down, and they didn't know what to do. Railguns reloaded, Danny announced, his hands steady on the firing controls. Ready when you are, Captain. Target their command ship, Jake ordered. The big one in the center. Fire when ready. 2 more thunderous shots rang out. The railgun slugs crossed the distance in a fraction of a second. The first one hit the Valtrine flagship shields, which were designed for energy weapons and did little against solid projectiles. The shield flickered and died. The second slug hit the hull directly, tearing through armor like it was paper. Direct hit, Kevin reported. Their command ship is venting atmosphere. Multiple hull breaches. The Valtrine ships were trying to form a defensive formation now, but Amy was flying the horizon's edge like a ship half its size. She twisted and turned through space, making the rebuilt vessel dance despite the violent shaking and the grinding of stressed metal. Her manual piloting was unpredictable in a way that computer navigation never could be. Lisa, how's our reactor holding up? Jake called down to engineering. Temperature is critical. Lisa's strained voice came back. We're at 120% output. The containment field is stable, but I don't know for how long. Keep it running, Jake said. We end this fast or we don't end it at all. A Valtrine ship fired energy weapons at them. The beams cut through space where the horizon's edge had been a second before, but Amy had already rolled the ship away. The old navigation computer would have followed predictable evasion patterns. Amy was flying on instinct and adrenaline, impossible to predict. Coming around for another pass, Amy warned. Hold on. She threw the ship into a hard turn that made everyone's stomach lurch. Warning lights flashed as the structural support screamed in protest, but the ship held together. They came around behind 3 Valtrine vessels that were clustered together. 3 targets, 3 shots, Jake said. Danny? On it. Danny fired the railguns in rapid sequence. Each shot took enormous power from the reactor, causing the lights to dim momentarily. But each shot found its target. The first Valtrine ship lost its engine section and went spinning off course. The second took a hit to what looked like its weapons array, causing a chain reaction of explosions along its hull. The third ship's shields held for a moment before collapsing, and the slug tore through its midsection. That's 6 ships damaged or destroyed, Kevin counted. 6 left operational, but they're breaking formation. I think they're trying to retreat. Don't let them, Jake said. Amy, stay on them. Danny, keep firing. The horizon's edge pursued the fleeing Valtrine ships like a predator chasing prey. The alien vessels were faster than the human ship should have been, but Lisa had pushed the engine so far beyond their limits that the horizon's edge matched their speed. The rebuilt systems, crude as they were, didn't have the safety limits that would have stopped a normal ship. One of the Valtrine ships tried to turn and fight. It fired energy weapons and launched some kind of missiles at the horizon's edge. Amy dodged the energy beams, but the missiles were tracking them. Missiles incoming, Kevin warned. 6 of them, they're locked on. Lisa, can we go faster? Jake asked. No, but I can give you a surge, Lisa replied. Just for a few seconds. It might blow the engines completely, but it'll work. Do it. The horizon's edge suddenly lurched forward, accelerating beyond anything it should have been capable of. The missiles, which had been closing in, suddenly fell behind as the human ship outran them. The missiles' targeting systems, designed to track ships moving at normal speeds, couldn't adjust in time. They lost their lock and exploded harmlessly in space. Railguns ready, Danny reported. Last load before we run out of ammo. Make them count, Jake said. Danny targeted the Valtrine ship that had fired at them. He waited until they were close, so close that Amy was grimacing with worry about collision. Then he fired all 4 railguns at once. The combined impact was devastating. The Valtrine ship didn't just get holes punched in it, it came apart, breaking into large pieces that tumbled away in different directions. There was no explosion, just structural failure from massive kinetic impact. The remaining 5 Valtrine ships were running now, full retreat with no attempt to fight back. But Commander Vek's flagship was damaged and slow. It couldn't keep up with the others. Jake saw an opportunity. Amy, intercept the flagship. Get us alongside, Captain? Amy questioned, but she was already adjusting course. We're out of railgun ammo, Jake explained. But we still have those emergency cutting lasers Danny rigged up. We're going to get close and personal. The horizon's edge closed in on the Valtrine flagship. The alien ship tried to maneuver away, but it was too damaged. Amy brought the human ship alongside until they were less than 100 meters apart, close enough to see individual windows and airlocks on the Valtrine hull. Fire the lasers, Jake ordered. The cutting lasers, meant for salvage operations and emergency hull repairs, lit up the space between the two ships. They weren't powerful enough to be effective at long range, but at this distance they were devastating. The beams cut into the Valtrine ship's armor, melting through it like a torch through butter. Target their engine core, Danny said, directing the beams. There, that section that's glowing. The lasers focused on the Valtrine engine section. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the alien ship shuddered and its engines went dark. The flagship was dead in space, powerless and drifting. Jake opened a communication channel. Commander Vec, this is Captain Morrison. Your ship is disabled. Your fleet is running. You tried to shut us down, but we adapted. We rebuilt. We came back stronger. On the screen, Vec's face appeared. The alien no longer looked confident or superior. He looked defeated and confused. How did you do this? Your technology was destroyed. You destroyed our technology, Jake agreed. So we stopped using technology you could destroy. You made us adapt, and humans are very good at adapting. We've been doing it for thousands of years. This is impossible, Vec said. No species has ever resisted the collective's method before. That's because they relied on their technology, Jake replied. We rely on ourselves. Technology is just a tool. You can take away our tools, but you can't take away our ability to make new ones. Better ones. Ones you can't stop. Vec was silent for a moment. What will you do with us? That depends, Jake said. You were heading to Earth to disable our entire fleet. Are you going to keep trying? The collective will hear of this defeat, Vec said quietly. They will send more ships. Then we'll be ready, Jake promised. And we'll teach them the same lesson we taught you. You tried to send humanity back to the Stone Age, but all you did was remind us that we climbed out of the Stone Age once before. We can do anything we set our minds to. Jake cut the communication and turned to his crew. They looked exhausted, covered in sweat and grime, but they were smiling. They'd done the impossible. They'd taken a crippled ship and turned it into a weapon that even the Valtrine couldn't stop. Amy, set a course for Earth, Jake ordered. Best possible speed. Lisa, keep those engines running as long as you can. We need to get home and warn the fleet about what's coming. What about the Valtrine flagship? Kevin asked, gesturing at the disabled alien ship. Leave it, Jake said. Let them drift here and think about what happened. When their rescue ships come, they can explain to the collective how a single human ship with no working computers defeated their entire fleet. Maybe it'll make them reconsider attacking Earth. The horizon's edge turned away from the battlefield, leaving the disabled Valtrine ships behind. As they accelerated toward home, Jake looked around the bridge at his crew. They'd started this mission as explorers and scientists. The Valtrine had tried to turn them into victims. Instead, they'd become warriors, and they'd shown the galaxy that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't technology. It was the refusal to give up no matter how impossible the odds seemed. Sir, Danny said quietly, we just took on 12 warships with a rebuilt exploration vessel, held together with spare parts and determination. And we won, Jake nodded. Yeah, we did. And that's what we're going to tell Earth when we get home. We're going to tell them how to beat the Valtrine. We're going to show them that sometimes the best technology is the simplest technology, the kind you can fix with your own hands when everything else fails. God mode, Amy said suddenly. That's what the old gamers used to call it. When you find a way to become unbeatable, Jake smiled. God mode. I like that. The Valtrine tried to shut us down, but we upgraded ourselves to God mode instead. The horizon's edge limped into Earth orbit 6 days later. The ship looked like it had been through a war, which it had. Scorch marks covered the hull where the cutting lasers had overheated. The engines were barely running, held together by welds and prayers. Half the systems were still offline, and the ones that worked did so through sheer stubbornness. But the ship was home, and more importantly, it had a message to deliver. Fleet Command was waiting for them. Admiral Chris Palmer, the head of Earth's space defense, personally came aboard the horizon's edge to meet with Jake and his crew. The Admiral walked through the ship with wide eyes. looking at the exposed wiring, the manual controls, the crude but functional systems that the crew had built with their own hands. "Captain Morrison," Palmer said, shaking his head in disbelief, "when we lost contact with your ship, we assumed the worst. Then you show up in orbit with a story about defeating a fleet of alien warships. Forgive me, but it sounds impossible." "I have all the sensor recordings," Jake replied, gesturing to where Kevin had manually transferred their data to simple storage devices. "And we didn't come alone." On the view screen, Palmer could see the damaged Valtrine ships that Earth forces had found drifting in space. Recovery teams were boarding them now, confirming everything Jake had reported. The evidence was undeniable. "Walk me through what happened," Palmer said, sitting down heavily in one of the bridge chairs, "and explain how you rebuilt an entire ship in 3 days." Jake spent the next hour explaining everything. The Valtrine attack, the desperate rebuilding process, the discovery that their crude systems were immune to the alien weapon, and finally the battle itself. Lisa showed Palmer the reactor modifications. Danny demonstrated the railgun design. Amy explained her manual navigation system. Palmer listened to everything, asking questions, taking notes. When they finished, he sat in silence for a long moment. "You realize what you've done," he finally said. "You've shown us that our entire fleet is vulnerable. If the Valtrine had reached Earth and fired that weapon, we would have been helpless. Every ship, every station, every defense platform, all of it would have been disabled. That's why we came back," Jake said. "To warn you, and to show you how to fight back. By simplifying," Palmer said thoughtfully, "by removing the vulnerabilities that advanced systems create." Kevin stepped forward. "Admiral, I've spent the last 6 days analyzing the Valtrine technology and our response to it. The problem isn't that we're too advanced. The problem is that we've become completely dependent on that advancement. We've built everything around computer systems, assuming they'll always work. When they don't, we're helpless, and so what's the solution?" Palmer asked. "Hybrid systems," Lisa explained. "We keep the advanced technology, but we add manual backups for everything. Redundant systems that use different principles. Simple fallbacks that can't be disabled by an EMP or similar weapons. The goal isn't to go backward. It's to ensure we always have options." Palmer nodded slowly. "You're talking about retrofitting the entire fleet." "I'm talking about redesigning our entire approach to technology," Lisa corrected. "Not just the military, everything. Civilian ships, space stations, ground installations. We need to make sure that nothing can ever shut us down completely. That would take months, maybe years," Palmer said. "The Valtrine will be back," Jake said. "Commander Vec told me the Collective would send more ships. And they're probably not the only species using this kind of weapon. There are others out there who've learned to exploit advanced civilizations by targeting their technology. We need to be ready." Palmer stood up, looking around the bridge one more time. "I'll need to present this to the Defense Council. They're not going to like hearing that our entire technological infrastructure is vulnerable. They'll like it even less when the Valtrines show up with a bigger fleet," Danny pointed out. Palmer smiled grimly. "True enough. Captain Morrison, I'm going to need your ship and your crew to help with this. We need to study what you've built here and figure out how to apply it across the fleet. Are you willing?" Jake looked at his crew. They were exhausted, dirty, and probably needed weeks of rest, but they all nodded without hesitation. "We're willing," Jake said, "but we need to move fast. We bought Earth some time, but not much." Over the next 3 months, Earth shipyards became hives of frantic activity. Engineers studied the Horizon's Edge modifications and began implementing similar changes across the fleet. It wasn't a simple process. Every ship was different, and the hybrid approach required creativity and adaptation. Lisa led the engineering effort, training teams of engineers in the philosophy of redundant systems and manual backups. She taught them to think like someone who had to rebuild a ship with no computers. Even while building ships with computers, every control needed a manual override. Every system needed a simple backup. Danny worked with weapons designers, showing them that sometimes the old ways were better. Railguns were added to ships alongside energy weapons. Simple mechanical systems replaced complex targeting computers as backups. The philosophy was simple: have a way to fight even if everything advanced failed. Amy trained navigators in the old methods of space travel, the calculations and techniques that had been forgotten when computers took over. It was harder than modern navigation, but it was also impossible to disable remotely. Kevin analyzed the Valtrine technology and other alien systems that intelligence had gathered over the years. He found that humanity wasn't alone in its vulnerability. Many advanced species had similar weaknesses, their technology so sophisticated that it created exploitable flaws. His reports changed how Earth approached first contact situations and trade negotiations. Jake found himself giving lectures at military academies and engineering schools. He told the story of the Horizon's Edge over and over, emphasizing not the battle but the adaptability, the willingness to throw away assumptions and rebuild from first principles when necessary. The Valtrine thought they could shut us down, he would tell audiences. They thought removing our technology would make us helpless. But they forgot that humans built all this technology ourselves. We started with nothing but curiosity and determination, and we reached the stars. Taking away our tools doesn't make us weak. It just forces us to build better tools. 6 months after the battle, Earth's fleet had been transformed. Ships now looked different, with exposed systems and manual controls visible alongside their sophisticated computers. They were less elegant, more functional, but infinitely more reliable. More importantly, every ship could keep fighting even if its computers were destroyed. Admiral Palmer stood with Jake on the observation deck of Earth's primary defense station, looking out at the fleet that had been rebuilt according to the lessons of the Horizon's Edge. "It's not pretty," Palmer admitted. The council was horrified when they saw the first retrofitted ships. "Too crude," they said. "Too simple. Not befitting of humanity's technical achievement." "But it works," Jake said. "But it works," Palmer agreed. And when the Valtrine came back last week with 3 times as many ships, it worked very well indeed. Jake had heard about the battle. The Valtrine had returned expecting to find Earth's fleet just as vulnerable as before. Instead, they'd found ships that shrugged off EMP weapons and fought back with a mixture of advanced and simple technology that the Valtrine couldn't counter. The battle had been short and decisive. The Valtrine had retreated, and intelligence suggested they were re-evaluating their entire strategy. "What about the other species?" Jake asked. "The ones who might try the same thing?" "Word is spreading," Palmer said. "Other civilizations are learning that humanity can't be shut down. Some are worried. Some are impressed. A few are already asking us to share our hybrid technology approach. Apparently, we're not the only ones who realized their technology had made them vulnerable." Jake smiled. "So we're setting a new standard." "More than that," Palmer said. "We're showing the galaxy what humans do when faced with impossible odds. We adapt, we innovate, we rebuild. The Valtrine tried to send us back to the Stone Age, but all they did was remind us of the journey we took from the Stone Age to the stars. That journey made us who we are." Down in the shipyards, the Horizon's Edge was being rebuilt once again. This time it was a proper refit, not a desperate improvisation. But Jake had insisted they keep some of the original modifications visible. The manual controls, the exposed wiring, the simple backups, they were a reminder of what the ship and crew had accomplished. Lisa walked up to join them at the observation window. "They want me to design a new class of ship based on our modifications. They're calling it the Horizon class. Fast, tough, and impossible to shut down." "How many are they building?" Jake asked. 20 to start. More if the design works out. Every major power in human space wants some. They're also implementing the hybrid philosophy in civilian ships. Nobody wants to be vulnerable to an EMP attack again. "We changed everything," Jake said quietly. "One desperate fight, and we changed how humanity thinks about technology." "Not just humanity," Palmer said. "The whole galaxy is watching. Some of the older civilizations are reconsidering their own technology. They've grown comfortable, relying on sophisticated systems without considering the vulnerabilities. You've reminded everyone that advancement isn't just